Internship season is upon us, and we have a bunch of content planned for you guys who are entering the workforce or entering your internships, and we wanted to start with this one, which is things that we wish we knew before we started work. We each have 2 points. I have no idea what she's thought up, she has no idea what I thought up, and we're going to discuss them both today.
So the first one that immediately came to mind, which was actually inspired by a conversation that we had recently with a subscriber that we met in person. Hi, Natalie. Is that no one talks about it when you're in law school, or I guess a lot of times when you're studying a subject, but it's quite common to have doubts about what you're studying and whether you actually want to pursue that in the future.
Yeah.
For me, that was something I very much felt already halfway through law school, to be honest. But because everyone is sort of in the mindset of like, let's get this degree, let's find a job. So you're sort of like chasing that with everyone else. And there is good energy, like camaraderie in that way. But in the same way, it also distracts from feelings of doubt because you feel like you don't fit in if you're not also chasing that same thing. And I think that also distracted me from understanding how valid that doubt was.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I think so, absolutely. I think one of the interesting things that you see, especially in law school, and I'm sure this applies in other fields too, but because law school kind of feeds into becoming a lawyer, people kind of really just ask, what type of lawyer do you want to become, right? There's not really that thought of, I'll go do something different, or I'll go pursue something completely separate from it. It's this idea that you kind of have to be a lawyer, and if you say that you don't want to be a lawyer, it's almost like people kind of look at you with that face of like, why are you in law school kind of thing, when in reality, I think there's actually a lot of legitimate reasons to be in law school without being a lawyer.
I feel like a question that's definitely not asked is, do you want to be a lawyer? It's just an assumption that you will become a lawyer. And it was interesting because I felt like it was only after I graduated and I started working and I spoke to a lot of friends that I met through work, colleagues, and I realized that doubt was actually quite common, but it just felt taboo to say anything about it while you're actually in law school.
One more thing about law school that I think is actually worth mentioning before we move on is the soft skills that you pick up and the logical reasoning that you pick up from law school. It's actually something that I think translates to pretty much everything you do. Even now when we talk to people and when we have problems that we face or even just things that we don't really know how to deal with, I think having that skill set of problem solving, communication, logical reasoning, that we learn in law school and from being lawyers is actually super, super relevant,
Yeah, I actually think a good example is my younger sister, who I think I've mentioned her on this channel before, but she went to law school also, but afterwards decided to become a software engineer.
Yeah.
And she's now a software engineering manager, but she's found that her communication skills that she picked up in law school has been really useful for this role. So that's just like a good example of how something that seems very unrelated is actually very helpful.
Yeah. Hey guys, I just wanted to mention real quick that our newsletter, Food for Thought, has been live for a few weeks now, and we'll be putting out additional issues on legal and careers as we get into the summer internship season and beyond. In the legal and careers issues, we'll be giving you guys tips on how best to perform at your internships and at your interviews, and we'll be responding to the great questions we received from you guys. So if you're interested in receiving Food for Thought, as well as the additional legal and careers issues, subscribe to the newsletter at the link below, confirm your subscription, and hit the big red button to opt in for the legal and careers issues in your welcome email. For existing subscribers, you will have seen a big red opt-in button in your latest issue as well. Thanks a lot, and now back to the video. So I actually ended up with a positive and a negative thing. So I'll start with the positive thing. It just kind of inadvertently happened like that. But the positive thing is that I think when you enter the workforce and when you're doing any sort of work or kind of, even an internship, I think you kind of have to create your own opportunities. And there are a lot of ways to create opportunities or find opportunities for yourself where it might not be incredibly obvious. So this was really good advice that was given to me by a friend who was then an associate in London at a top tier firm and who's now a senior associate. And he was saying that, even as a trainee or even as an intern, you kind of want to be proactive about creating your own opportunities rather than just letting things happen to you. And the example that he gave me was, he really wanted to do a rotation through a certain team with a certain partner. So before that time came up, he actually went and got to know that partner and spoke to him about his practice and said that he was really interested. And he kind of then was able to proactively, let the firm know that that's something that he was interested in and let the partner know that he was interested in his practice. And I think that's something that I've tried to do with my career as well, where, if there are things that I'm interested in, I try to go and proactively look out opportunities to learn more about those things or speak to the right people, let HR know, let the partners know, and I think that kind of lets you be in control of your own destiny a little bit more than if you just let things happen to you. there is some degree of obviously, going through different rotations within the firm or within a company. You kind of are subject to decisions made by high-level management, but you can have a bit of influence in that decision making. You know what I mean?
I do think that, and part of this can also be cultural, but I think a lot of times people do feel shy about expressing what they're interested in or what they want. And I think it's obviously a fine line. I think some people do this but end up sounding very demanding, whereas it's just, you can just politely let people know because people can't read your mind, so you do need to give them some indication to help them help you.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because I think there's a healthy middle ground here too, right? You don't want to be that guy that sort of is known for just networking all day, and just sort of going and talking to people, because that's not really what it's about. I think it's, a healthy middle ground between not doing anything and letting things happen to you, and going out and sort of looking for opportunities and sort of meeting people and letting them know that you're interested, so that at least it's in their mind that, oh, this guy is interested in doing this thing. If an opportunity comes up, they might think of you, but not badgering them either and sort of being there all day. Yeah.
Okay, so next up for me is when you start interning or start working full-time, the imposter syndrome is real. You feel so self-conscious and you feel like everyone around you knows what they're doing except for you.
Yeah.
And that is totally normal.
Yeah, that's real. I remember texting you my first month. Yeah. Several times where I was like, oh my God, I think I suck, and it was such a real thing.
I actually didn't realize this until, so for context, I started working as a lawyer 3 years before Lloyd, and I didn't realize that my feelings of feeling like a lost idiot basically constantly were actually quite normal until I guess I lost that feeling over time as, I became more experienced. And then Lloyd started working and it was like, I think I'm an idiot. I was like, oh, no. I think everyone feels like that. You're fine.
Yeah, no, it's so relatable. And to be honest, I think this is, this transcends whatever it is you're doing. I think any career kind of has this. Once you kind of get thrown in the deep end, it's like, holy shit. There's just so much that you don't know. But at the same time, I think people kind of expect that. And I think, as I got more senior, and I'm sure you had the same experience, but when we had junior people coming in, you kind of expect them to know nothing. So, the expectation is kind of low. All that people really expect from you is that you'll try hard, you'll be willing to learn, you'll be willing to take on responsibility.
Hopefully have a good attitude about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also one of those things where this is by no means exclusive to law, but what you learn in school is actually not all that useful when you actually go out to practice. It's just super different, and that's normal. And honestly, when you're on the other end and you're not so junior anymore, you don't forget that, so you don't have an expectation, generally speaking, that the people coming in who are new and very fresh know everything that's going on already.
Yeah. I think the only one thing that people do expect interns at a law firm anyway to be able to do is research, right? Because when you're in school, that's pretty much all you're doing. You're able to look up cases, you're able to write papers, you're able to come up with legal arguments. So I think that's the only expectation that people sort of put on students.
Yes.
Outside of that, really nothing else. I mean, there's no way, you came out of the womb with the ability to draft a contract. It's just not possible, And
really? I don't know about you.
Well, I'm curious, though, for our non-law audience, if anyone here has any experience working in a job that wasn't law, I'm curious how much of your education actually translated to what you were doing. Because, again, for law, we always talk about, 10 to 15% maybe of what we learned being relevant. I'm curious if other industries it's a bit more specific or targeted, but I would imagine it's probably about the same.
Yeah.
Last point. So the fourth one that I have, so this is the negative one, right? I think that people get this idea in their head of, oh, I'll be making a lot of sacrifices when I start working. Obviously my schedule is a lot more tied to, my work day. But I think one of the biggest sacrifices that people don't really realize coming into it is that you're sacrificing your ability to consistently plan things, right? And I think this is specifically the case for jobs like we had, where there wasn't really a set time. It wasn't like you're working 9 till 5 or 9 till 6 or 9 till 7. It's like our contracts actually said the hours of work are between 9 to 5:30, but you are expected to work additional time as required to fulfill your duties, right?
Yes.
That was the standard language in any contract. And people would say stuff like, oh, don't you get paid overtime? It's like, that concept does not exist, in professional services or, certainly in a law firm. So one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was going to jiu-jitsu. But for me, that was really difficult, and it was always kind of a challenge, especially at a very junior level, because I sort of had to go to class between 7 to 9 p.m. if I wanted to go. And, you know, it was really hard to do that because oftentimes we'd actually have calls or we'd have work that we needed to turn around in the night. And so it was really difficult to just plan around that. And I think it was hard. You know, it was hard. I think that was one of the things that hit me the hardest, I would say. On top of that, like people talk about, you know, why don't you just go in the morning? There was a 6 a.m. class and I think a 7 a.m. class at my gym. And I'd often be working pretty late into the night at like 11 or 12 o'clock. And so the idea of getting 6 or 7 hours and then going to jujitsu completely not warmed up in the morning didn't seem that appealing to me. You know, I sort of thought that wasn't really a good idea.
I mean, you can make things work, but it's certainly very difficult. And you always sort of live with a baseline level of unpredictability.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't think it's necessarily, you know, it's part of the job, so it's not like there's anything that you can really do to solve that issue. But I think having that mindset of, you know, I'm just gonna find pockets of time where I can go and do things was actually something that we needed to learn very quickly. You know, otherwise you ended up just not really doing anything, right? It was that whole time dilation experience of like, oh man, like, you know, I probably should stay at my desk because like I can't go and do this thing right now in case someone like calls. And then before you know it, you know, an hour or two passes by and you could have actually done something within that time. So for me, it was very much just jumping on every opportunity I could to go to a class or, you know, in the morning, if I could pop out to the gym, great. There is a silver lining. I think things do get better as you get more senior. So as I got more senior, you know, I was able to pop out because you have more visibility just over what you're doing. So I was able to sort of create those pockets of time for myself a little bit more. I think it also, though, depends on the practice that you're in because I don't think you had that flexibility the same kind of way.
I think I still did.
Okay.
I mean, it certainly improved over time.
Yeah.
I think how much will just really be highly dependent on what exactly you're doing, like the firm or team you work for. But it's one of those things where once you spend more time working for, I guess, like the same partners, they kind of see you graduate from being like a baby who needs their hand held to like a toddler who can walk by themselves, to be honest. So like you build that trust. They know that, you know, they can leave you be and you will get the work done. So.
Yeah. So I think that's the positive spin for it because I remember as an associate too, when I was talking to trainees, they were like, oh, like, but I can't like make it to the gym or I can't do this and I can't do that. And I said, you know, it's a lot harder as a trainee. It's a lot harder as a junior, but you will get to that point where you have more visibility. You understand, you know, when things are going to get busy. So you can kind of plan around that and make your way to the gym. And honestly, that was one of the things I liked most about getting more senior. You just get that autonomy, which is nice. We did do the like, comment, and subscribe.
Oh, right.
God, we're so bad at this. Like, comment, and subscribe. As we mentioned, guys, we have a lot of content planned around internships and work generally, so if you have any thoughts or comments, please do leave a comment here or send us an email. And we also occasionally do AMAs on Instagram, so make sure to follow us there if you want your questions answered. Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
And we'll catch you guys in the next one.